Hey everybody, welcome to the DivergentComics YouTube channel. This is Gary, and today I am going to be going over my top 10 favorite Marvel and DC comic book characters. This was requested by our last guest, Skylar, and I thought it would be something fun to do. It was actually relatively difficult to narrow down my 10 favorite comic book characters, but I feel like I came up with 10 that were really that set themselves apart in my mind from the comics. I do have two honorable mentions that I will also hit before I end the video. So coming in at number 10 on this list of my favorite comic book characters, and this is just going based off of what they've done and how exciting they were for me. But also it's just some personal things. Like there's going to be a few characters that have longer story arcs than some of the others that are on the list. It's just more so out of personal preference and how the writers choose to portray those characters in those situations. But starting at number 10 is going to be Magneto. And Magneto, as most people know, he is essentially the powerhouse of magnetism. He is an Omega level mutant. And there's so many things that he's done in the comics that makes him extremely powerful. But one of the things that I thought was absolutely phenomenal, and actually I'm gonna do two things for him because I just thought about something else. But the first one was when he held together a dying Celestial. Celestials, as we saw in the movie The Eternals, and for many of you who know from the comics, these are like extremely powerful beings that are almost godlike, to be honest with you. And for him to hold together a Celestial while it's dying is nothing to sneeze at. Absolutely phenomenal. Another thing I really love about Magneto actually comes from the not House of M, but the Powers of M and Powers of X storylines. By this time, the X-Men includes Magneto, and they all live on the island of Genosha. And he makes a lot of very difficult decisions in those storylines that involve the protection and salvation of the mutant population. And I feel like there were many times where Professor X in the storylines did things that Magneto had to override and keep the X-Men and the mutants alive. So that's number 10. Number 9 on the list is Daredevil. I love Daredevil. I love his show. I love a lot of his comics. I would say I really fell in love with Daredevil because of the Chip Zdarsky Daredevil run, because that really was a very gritty and powerful run. And I believe that's actually the most current run that's going on. I read some of the older Daredevil stories, specifically the ones that I read the most would be the one where he was facing off against the Hand. And he had just met Elektra. I want to say that was the Man Without Fear storyline. That's the one I've read the most. There's nothing specifically about Daredevil that makes him absolutely phenomenal. He's just a very intriguing character. The show, the Netflix show, does a really good justice for him. But it's not the entirety of the character. The character of Daredevil is very complex. He's much more than just Batman without gadgets. He's very much so a complex character that deals with a lot, honestly. And I think that's part of the reason why I like him, is because they take so many different storylines and just beat up Matt. And it's like, can this man get a break? There were times where he, an adaptation on the show in season 3 of Daredevil was when Kingpin found out who Matt was. But all of that stemmed from, in the comics, due to an addiction from Karen. where she sold his his identity to someone who ended up giving it to the Kingpin, and that caused a whole problem. But it's like things like that where he goes through so much. He even ended up losing. I can't remember what her name was, but it was in the Man Without Fear storyline. He ended up losing her and Foggy because of the fact that he wouldn't give up the identity of Daredevil. So that's one of the things I think got really, really well and done perfectly in the show. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why I love Daredevil, and I'm going to be a huge fan of the show that's supposed to come out in a few years, Daredevil Born Again. And if y'all want me to, I'll talk about the comic series that's based off of. I have to read that one again. But if you want me to, definitely let me know in the comments, like, hey, I'll cover it. Now, number 8. I'm not gonna lie, this one is really fun. This actually is what made me want to do this series or this video even more. But number 8 is the Wally West Flash. And here's why. Wally West is absolutely OP. And I will say this is up until they did whatever they did in Rebirth or after Rebirth. But Wally West, for those of you who don't know, he's typically identified as Kid Flash in the comics. He becomes the Flash after Crisis on Infinite Earths because Barry runs on the cosmic treadmill and he's lost in the Crisis. I can't remember exactly if he actually died or if he was lost in the Speed Force. I want to say he was lost in the Speed Force. But when that happened, Wally West took up the name of the Flash. And this was post-Crisis up until New 52. Then during New 52, we had the issue with the Button. Essentially, no. The Button came up in Rebirth. We had the issue with Flashpoint. And near the end of Flashpoint, Wally West ended up, I want to say, taking Barry's place in the Speed Force. And during that time, between the time of New 52 and Rebirth, where Flashpoint took place, Wally West was in the Speed Force. And when he came out of the Speed Force, he was trying to get people to recognize him so that he can be grounded into this reality. Well, the crazy part about it, when that actually happened, it ended up happening with him and Barry. He went to so many different people, no one ever remembered him. But he ended up going to Barry at the end, and he was just like, Barry, just tell Linda, I love her, whatnot. And then that's when it clicked for him. And I want to say is when he touched Barry, specifically when that happened. But shortly after that, the Titans, which in the Rebirth story, the Titans team consisted of Nightwing, Garth, Donna Troy, Hawk and Dove, I want to say Bumblebee, and Lilith. I believe that was the entire team. And there may have been like one or two more that I can't remember. But they were facing Abracadabra. He took credit for locking Wally in the Speed Force. Now, the crazy part about it is he actually didn't lock Wally in the Speed Force. He just said he did. But here's the crazy part. He had set up a thing where he made the Titans break off into groups of 2, except for Wally. They broke up into groups of 2. No, with Wally. They broke up into groups of 2 and spread them across the United States. And then he also had Linda Park tied up and hanging upside down over a vat of acid, I believe. And Wally had to save each of the Titans from across the United States and then get back to save Linda before the rope broke so that he could say so that she didn't get like disintegrated or whatever. And he had to do that in less than like a couple of seconds. He moved so fast. He was moving in picoseconds. He was literally moving that fast. He moved so fast that he thought he was about to get pulled back into the Speed Force. And I want to say he got dangerously close. But as you're going to see, like, or as you see on the screen, like, he moved super fast. Like, I want to say he broke Barry Allen's record. That's how fast he was going. So, like, that's one of the reasons why I just absolutely love Wally West, because some of the feats that he's done, and that's not the first time he's done things like that. He's moved at that type of speed in the past and plenty of other issues. But yeah, Wally is a straight up beast, and he's probably my favorite Flash, to be honest with you. It's probably him, and then Barry, and then there's the other Wally from New 52. But yeah, Wally West is a beast. Coming in at number 7, she doesn't have any real feats, at least from what I've seen so far. I still have to finish her series. But Jo Mullions, she's a really, really powerful Green Lantern. And really, I like her just because of how she handled herself in her jurisdiction that she's in. So for those of you who don't know, whenever you become a Green Lantern, you get assigned a jurisdiction because they're just the galactic police force. So you get assigned a jurisdiction and you have to monitor it or whatever. And if anything happens, you pretty much have to be one of the first to respond to it. You have to work with the local police to make sure things get handled or whatnot. And the first issue really just sold me on her as a character, just how she handled herself and the way that she was like, they was trying to talk down on her because she was a Green Lantern and from Earth, and she wasn't having it. She's like, no sir, I'm the Green Lantern. You better watch your mouth. And I was like, okay, Jo, like, hold your own, Jo. I like that. So like that just really like captivated me to her character. And then just seeing how she uses her Green Lantern ring it's always fun to see how different Green Lanterns use their ring. So that's always fun. So I really like her character, and I really am excited to see more from her, honestly. I really hope that they use her more. So with the Green Lanterns being on the list right now, I have to bring in another one that is honestly my absolute favorite Green Lantern right now. Like, there's literally nothing she can do wrong. And if you follow me on social media, you know who I'm about to talk about, because I absolutely love her. Like, she is the absolute best Green Lantern in my book. And it's funny because like she started out not being able to do anything as a Green Lantern. She was the absolute worst Green Lantern in the history of Green Lanterns. This is Jessica Cruz. And I love her because she started out, only thing she could do was shoot bolts out. And it's like she couldn't create constructs. She couldn't do anything. She was like, I'm the worst Green Lantern. Like, I have no way of being able to live up to this. I don't even know why the ring chose me. But it was during Rage Planet, I believe, where she actually confronted why she was unable to make constructs, and how she began to overcome that was just by realizing, like, fear is always going to be there. Anxiety is always going to be there. It's not really truly overcoming the fear or the anxiety. It's pushing through it. And when she realized that, and she finally like stood up and made it her own, like, she became powerful. And I love seeing that. I love seeing characters overcome internal battles. And that's one of the things I really want to push with my comics and DivergentComics, is the internal battles that people face from so many different things and so many different ways of life, whether it be anxiety, depression, whether it be situations of just feeling less than just due to a number of situations. Because with Jessica, like, she's never felt in her life like she was really worth much. Like, she's always been one of those, oh, I'm just here type of people. And if you read the Justice League Rebirth series, at the beginning when she was first being brought in, she had problems with, interacting with the group because she didn't feel like she belonged. Simon Bass, he tried a little bit and he kind of got accepted a little bit, but she felt like she wasn't accepted just because she didn't have that self-esteem, she didn't have that self-worth. And being able to see her progress and grow into that as they did the Green Lantern storyline just really made me love her character 10 times more. So yeah, Jessica Cruz, she's definitely one of my favorite and easily my favorite Green Lantern at this point. So now, about to hit the top 5. Before we go into the top 5, I'm going to give one of my honorable mentions. My first honorable mention is going to be Captain America. I love Captain America in the movies. I feel like he's portrayed relatively well. I love Captain America in the comics. He's really well done. Between him and Falcon, him and Sam, they're both like really good Captain Americas. But I will say, like, when they did the Secret Empire storyline, I was originally like, wait a minute, what is this? Like, I don't know. But when I actually read through it, it was actually pretty good. I didn't really have too much of an issue with the story itself. And I like that they chose to go a different direction with Captain America. So yeah, he's definitely an honorable mention. I wanted to put him on the list, but the rest of this list is hard to top, honestly. It's almost impossible to top. So, coming in at number 5, Luke Cage. I don't know where to start with Luke Cage, man. Honestly, the show didn't really do him as much justice as they should have. And that's just because it got canceled. Because if they had kept going, man, the things that they could have done with Luke Cage. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I could probably gush about Luke Cage for like the next hour. But one of the things that recently happened in the comics, for those of you who don't follow, Luke Cage recently became the mayor of New York. He beat out Wilson Fisk because Luke Cage is a G. That's all I'm going to say about it. Luke Cage is a G. Yeah, Luke Cage, number 5. Ongoing, number 4, Miles Morales. Now, I'm not a huge Spider-Man fan. I think he's a great character, but all in all, Spider-Man doesn't really interest me like that. Miles Morales, though, he really made that hard for me to stand by. Most of you have probably seen Into the Spider-Verse, so or at least have a decent idea of his powers. And if you haven't seen that movie, you need to go watch it. If you haven't played the Miles Morales video game, you need to go play it. It's fun. But Miles Morales, he has all the same powers as Peter Parker, but he's a bit more powerful. He's able to turn invisible, so his stealth is like on top of Peter's by 10. He's able to conduct bioelectricity from his body and turn that into what he calls a venom blast to stun people, which is OP in and of itself. Not only that, you mix that in with his ability to shoot webs, to stick to walls, to lift, I want to say, up to 10 times his body weight. He's also able to turn invisible. Like, all of those things, like, that makes him powerful, but that's not what makes him interesting. See, the thing that makes Miles Morales interesting is different from what makes Peter Parker interesting. See, what makes Peter Parker interesting is he is a normal, everyday person with spider powers. And the only thing that really draws a lot of people in with Peter is the fact that he goes through a lot and he still bounces back. Well, with Miles, the thing that makes Miles so drawing for me is the fact that it's for Miles, it's about community. It's about the people around him. It's about his family. And that specific interest in his community and to his people is what makes Miles that much more drawing. Because it's one thing to be Spider-Man and deal with characters like Doc Ock or the Goblin, and you have a group of people around you to help. It's another thing to have all that going on, and at the same time you have to deal with like things at home with your mom. You have to deal with things at home with like cousins and things like that. So it makes it even more powerful. But on top of that, to have one of your villains be your uncle, that's tough. That is tough. It's things like that. It's the small things that makes Miles Morales that interesting to me. So yeah, I love Miles Morales. There's so many of his stories that are really good. I would say if you can, read his very first issue, the very first time he was introduced into the Marvel Universe. That story was so good. Like, I read it like twice. It was good. Now, it's about time for my top 3. But before I get into my top 3, I'm going to do an honorable mention. My last honorable mention, Superman. Kal-El, Clark Kent. This man, he's, as most of you know, he's OP. He's almost unbeatable. Yeah, he has the weakness to kryptonite, but I mean, outside of that, you can't really stop this man. He's powerful. Superman, in my opinion, what makes him such an amazing character is how he capitulates the essence of what it means to be a human. He cares more about putting others first than he does himself, which is why you see so many evil Superman analogs, because it's like, oh, it's more interesting to see the best of us get corrupted, because like you can stack any hero up against Superman and in regards to morality. Outside of maybe Spider-Man, who's gonna come out more virtuous than Superman? You're not gonna find many, if any. Again, maybe Spider-Man, maybe. But he didn't make the list just because, all in all, characters have to be more interesting. And while I love Superman as a character, and he has some pretty iconic stories. He does. But outside of those iconic stories, there's not a lot of his comics that I've read that I was like, yeah, I'm going to go pick up another Superman, Overall, I mean, again, Superman is a great character, but just couldn't make my top 10. But back to the list. Coming in at number 3. I don't know how y'all gonna feel about this. Y'all might already know my top 3. But Green Arrow. I didn't start reading comics until maybe I want to say about like 5 or 6. No, it was about 7 years ago. And it actually was interesting when I started reading more Green Arrow, because he has so many intriguing plot lines. I started reading Green Arrow Rebirth Volume 1 and 2, and I couldn't put it down. Like, I think I read, those were the 2 volumes of comics I've read the fastest out of any comic series. So Green Arrow is, depending on the iteration that you see, he's probably one of the more, I would say, underrated and misunderstood DC Comics characters, just because of the fact that Oliver Queen is a billionaire in most Green Arrow comics. But the thing that makes him different, he doesn't do what he does out of vengeance. He doesn't do what he does out of some need to fulfill whatever. He simply does it because he's a social justice warrior. That's the thing that I like the most about him, especially in the more recent stories. But even in the older comics, you see a lot of what he does is just because he cares about people, all people, not just the rich billionaires, not just the poor whites. He cares about all people, and he's always willing to stick up for people. There was a part in the Green Arrow Volume 1 where he found out that Queen Industries this was Green Arrow Rebirth Volume 1. But he found out that Queen Industries was using fake ledgers to transport drugs. And he wasn't going to stand for it. He was talking with, I want to say it was his CFO, or it was one of his business partners. He thought that the business partner was on the up and up, and he was like, all right, like, we need to handle this and the other. His business partner threw him overboard. So, yeah, things like that. Not only that, but also in the comics, there is a character called Bronze Tiger, who is considered one of the best hand-to-hand combatants in the DC universe. And he has lost plenty of times to Green Arrow, hand-to-hand. So Green Arrow is a bad man. He is a bad man. Plus, not only that, like, he has one of the few non-toxic relationships with Black Canary, which is always good to see. It's always good to see a good non-toxic relationship. And now, we're in the top 2. Now, most of you already know one of the characters in the top 2. And if you know me in any sort of way, you already know both of the characters in the top 2. But you may not know exactly which order is going to come in. So let me go ahead and end that for you. And I'm just going to go ahead and just give you 1 and 2 at the same time. I'm going to tell you who 2 is first, and then I'll tell you who 1 is. But 2 is Batman, Bruce Wayne. And then number 1 is, you'll have to wait until after this. But yeah, Batman. Number 2, easy choice, because I mean, there's so many things he has done, so many things he continues to do in comics that's just absolutely phenomenal. I think one of the best things that I've ever seen him do, I want to say this was a Batman Rebirth storyline. There was a meta-human that came to Gotham called Mr. Bloom. He was a big walking flower, literally big walking flower. And it took Batman doing everything in his power, plus I believe he had to reach out to the League of Assassins to take this meta-human down. But it shows like Batman will go to any length when it comes to saving Gotham. He will team up with his villains if it means taking down a bigger threat. He will do whatever he has to do. He will push himself to the max if it comes down to it when it comes to saving Gotham. And that's one of the things that I love the most about Batman. He's never going to give up. One of the things that I believe I've seen Batman do was he literally has told Alfred, he's told plenty of his Robins, like, hey, as long as I still have breath in my body, I'm going to fight. Things like that. That's what makes Batman Batman. People can talk all the time about prep time. People talk all the time about plot armor, this, that, and the other, whatever. When it comes down to it, if Gotham is in trouble, and there's an issue that needs to be solved that no one else can solve, Batman is going to solve it. And if he can't solve it, he's going to find out how he can solve it. And that's one of the things I'm always going to love about Batman. So y'all can keep the Batman slander out the comments. Like, it ain't welcome here. But to top it all off, end it with my number one all-time favorite and the character that got me to really loving comics the most, Nightwing. Dick Grayson, he is... I don't know how to really explain Dick Grayson in regards to what he means to me as a comic book character. Because Dick Grayson's story is so simple. He is an orphan because his family was killed by mobsters during their circus act. And to see him go from this angry child that wanted revenge to becoming one of the greatest Robins, to becoming the greatest Robin Batman has ever mentored. And there's no debate about it. Like, you can say Tim Drake, he's all right. Say Jason Todd, he became Red Hood, so come on now. You could say Damian, but come on, they refused to age Damian up in any rate. You can't say any of the women Robins because they did carry once. But yeah, the greatest Robin to ever be the sidekick to Batman, easily. He is the most logical to take up the mantle of Batman. And there are some stories where the only reason he became Nightwing or came up with the name Nightwing was because Superman gave him the idea of having that name, based off of, I want to say it was a mythological story from Krypton. So even in the DC universe, characters like Superman, who is touted as the greatest hero in the DC universe, recognize how amazing and how phenomenal of a character and a hero Dick Grayson is. And to do all of that under Batman and then step out of Batman's shadow and become your own character and just find your own niche and get that much respect, like, there's been no other character to do something like that to that level. You can say Wally West. I may even give it to you a little bit, but yeah, Dick Grayson is literally top of the line for me. You go from becoming a sidekick to your own hero and getting the respect from the entire community. You deserve that respect. I know people are going to say, no Static on the list, no Black Panther. Like, I like those characters. I like Static. I like Black Panther. I'm a huge fan of both of those characters. But in the scheme of the comics, Static's comics, outside of what happened in the Milestone original runs, have been basically non-existent. And T'Challa, Black Panther in the comics has been fun. I actually just recently read when he first fought the Fantastic Four. Very fun story. But they just couldn't, like, when I was going over my list, they just didn't stack up to these other characters that I absolutely just love. So yeah, that's my list. Let me know what your top 10 or top 5 favorite comic book characters are. Give me any feedback on my list. What did you like? What did you not like? Was there anyone on this list that was a surprise to you? Let me know. Don't forget to hit the like button at the bottom. Also subscribe if you're new. Turn the notification bell on because we have plenty more videos coming in the near future. And yeah, it's been Gary. Y'all have a good one. Peace.